Hi there, everybody. My name is Rabbi Avrohom, and this is Find Your Flourish. I'm your CEO or Chief Encouragement Officer, and I'm looking to spend some time with you and share an idea that I've been working on for the past few months. So, as I've mentioned in a previous podcast, my nemesis is stress and fear. I detest stress, I detest fear. So I've come up with a framework, with a system, if you will, which I call the calm system to help people deal with stress. And I hope that some of the tools and ideas that I will share with you today will be helpful in this regard. CALM is an acronym, C-A-L-M. The C stands for clarity, the A stands for agency, the L stands for life cycle, or lifestyle at least, and the M stands for mind-body alignment. So let's take all of those four categories together and let's look at them in more detail. The C stands for clarity. The first thing, if a person is stressed or feeling fear or anxiety, the first thing that you have to know is that stress and fear and anxiety, you have to understand it. You have to be able to define it and understand where it's coming from, because we have different types of stresses. We have external stresses. External stresses are the traffic jam that made you late for the meeting, that important meeting. An external stress could be your boss screaming at you. An external stress could be a customer that fires you. These are all external stresses. And when it comes to stresses, both external and internal, which I'll talk about internal stresses in a moment, the external stresses could range from being minor to major. So a minor stress is something like you button your shirt wrong and then you have to unbutton everything and rebutton it. A major stress is the loss of a loved one or a health problem, God forbid. And these stresses all have one thing in common, that we cannot control them. They're going to happen because they happen to us. They come from without our control and they happen to us. We also have internal stresses. Internal stresses are where we ruminate over things that happened in our past, where we have regrets and disappointments. And instead of allowing these to just flow through and move on, we become obsessed, we obsess over them, and our brain keeps going back, and what's going to happen if I can't pay this bill, and what's going to happen if my boss fires me, and these thoughts constantly regurgitate within our minds. So these are internal, and again, they could be minor to very traumatic. Now, the thing is, while we cannot control the external stresses, the things that make us stressed, that come from without our control, we can control the internal stresses because we are not our brains. We are separate things. So the C in calm, the clarity, is really understanding where is the stressor coming from. Is it something that's really happening from outside of us, or is it something that we are blowing out of proportion within ourselves? Now, we have perfect control over if we are blowing things up within ourselves, as much as we have no control over the circumstances of our life that are stressing us. So the first thing is to get clarity of what is the source of a stress. And that is the first step in really conquering and defeating stress and anxiety. As part of clarity, you should also understand the nature of stress. So here I'm going to draw on the world of engineering for a moment. Engineers define stress as well. Stress is the force of something, or a force, spread over an area. So it's force over area. So if you take a force, let's say a hammer, and you knock a nail into a piece of wood, the nail, the pointy end of the nail is very small surface area. The pressure of the hammer that knocks the nail will knock the nail into the wooden block, because that amount of pressure, the pressure of the nail, over that tiny space, which is the head of the nail, is enough force to push the nail into the block of wood. So that is the engineering or the physics definition of stress. It's the force over area. If you increase the area and keep the force the same, the nail will not go into the block. So let's say, for example, you have you hit the nail not on the top of the nail, which is the head of the nail, but you turn it around and you hit the nail on the bottom of the nail. So now the same amount of pressure is not enough to force the nail into the block, because that pressure is dissipated, spreads over the entire head of the nail. So you can reduce this to a mathematical formula. The formula is anxiety equals challenge minus ability. So let's break that down. Anxiety means the anxiety that we feel, the stress that we feel, is the challenge, whatever that challenge is. Again, it could be external or internal. It could be minor or major. And that's the amount of pressure. And the ability is the area in which that pressure dissipates or is spread over. So if you have a big challenge, like let's say you have to raise money for your startup, so that's a big challenge. You need to raise $10 million and you need to raise it by a certain time, otherwise you're going to run out of funds and the business is going to close. So, but that's a huge challenge. But if you've done it 10 times before and you know how to do a successful pitch and you know which VCs are going to be able to fund your business, then your ability is very large. So if we would give it a score, let's say the challenge is a 75, but your ability to solve the challenge is a 75 or an 80, so then your anxiety is 0. However, if the challenge is a 40 and your perceived ability to solve that challenge is only a 20, so 40 minus 20 is 20, that will give you 20 units of anxiety. So that's an equation that's part of the C for clarity. When we understand that when we're feeling stressed, the way to deal with the stress, one of the ways to deal with stress, one of the ways to address it, is to look at the stress as being challenge minus ability and figure out how you can either reduce the challenge, the size of the challenge, or increase your ability to manage and handle the challenge. So how do you increase your ability to manage the challenge? One way that you can do this is upskilling yourself. So let's say you need to accomplish some result and you just never done it before. So you engage in a course, you jump onto a YouTube course, you watch some videos, you see how it's done, you do a few practice runs, and you end up increasing your ability. So I'll tell you, I am personally experiencing this right now because I've never done a podcast before I started a few episodes ago, before I started Find Your Flourish, and that made me pretty nervous. Now, the clarity that I got is that it is a challenge. Sure, it's a challenge. Putting yourself out there, it's very frightening, right? There's surveys that people have done where they've said that they would rather die, their fear of death is less than their fear of exposing themselves by speaking in public. So this is very terrifying for me to have to speak to you on this podcast. It's terrifying. And I couldn't sleep well last night because I was nervous because I knew I had to record this podcast today. But you know what? As I'm learning more about the art and the craft of podcasting, the nerves are going to go down. The anxiety is going to go down. As I do it more, as I practice more, and the episodes get better, and hopefully you'll like, subscribe, and give me good feedback, which will all be very helpful, then what's going to happen is my ability is going to go up. So it's going to subtract from this big challenge. Okay, so that is the C. A stands for agency. And what agency means is that you don't let your stress and anxiety control you. You control your stress and anxiety. So let's look at that from the following from that perspective of the formula that I just spoke about, where anxiety equals challenge minus ability. So that is a very empowering formula, because it tells you that you don't have to be a victim of your anxiety or a victim of the things that are stressing you. You have agency and you can control that. What does that mean? It means you can focus on the things that are within your power. One of the things that's in your power, as I said before, is your ability to upskill yourself and increase your ability. That will decrease the stress. So instead of being a victim of the stress, instead of having that victim mindset, you become empowered to deal with the stress in healthy ways. And as we go through our time together in subsequent episodes, I plan on discussing much more about this agency piece. Before I leave it, I'll just leave you with one really amazing idea. There's a medrash, the medrash in Medrash Rabbah, Parsha Hey. The medrash is a Jewish work which discusses the Torah and looks at the Torah in terms of drush. Drush means a homiletic interpretation of the Torah. So this book says as follows, that when God created metal on the third day of creation, the trees trembled, and the trees were extremely concerned. They were anxious. They were having a panic attack. Why were the trees so nervous? Because they said, God has now created metal. Metal can be used in an axe, and an axe can chop down a tree. So they were concerned for their safety. And they cried out and they trembled and they said, how, God, could you create metal, which will be our destruction? So the metal itself, the iron, turned to the trees. And the iron said, trees, trees, you are being so foolish. Don't you know that if you don't provide the handle for the axe, nothing can happen? You have to give me a handle so that I can chop you down. And it's the same with stress. If we have agency, if we decide that we are not going to be victims of our stress, we are not going to be victims of anxiety, we refuse to suffer from anxiety any longer. When we make that decision, when we stop empowering those forces, those thoughts to bring us down and to make us feel like we are inadequate and that we are victims, when we stop that, that is the letter A, which stands for agency, and that helps us be calm and feel less stress and less fear in our lives. The next letter in the acronym is the letter L, and L stands for lifestyle. And here we'll delve in subsequent episodes, hopefully as well, into each of these areas, but very briefly and from a very high level, there are several areas in our life and in our lifestyle and how we conduct our life that have a direct and very strong impact on our fear and anxiety and worry. What are these things? Sleep, and there is a ton and growing evidence that the quality and quantity of our sleep has a direct impact on our mental health, on our ability to deal with stress, and on how much anxiety we feel. The other thing is our gut biome. They say that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I was just in Vegas last weekend. Well, what happens in your gut does not stay in your gut. What I mean by that is that scientists have determined, there's a direct correlation between your gut biome and your brain. In other words, if you have a healthy gut, and the way that you have a healthy gut is you eat healthy. So like my son likes to say, your food is your mood. If you want to have a good mood, you have to eat healthy. Probiotic foods, which is your sauerkraut and pickles, and prebiotic foods, which are vegetables and fruit and healthy proteins. All of those things, they encourage a healthy gut biome. And there are many studies that are showing increasingly how these things are connected with your mood. And then the third is exercise and movement. So exercising is so good for your mood. It's a regulator. There are many scientific reasons, physiological reasons why, when we exercise as part of our lifestyle triangle, that helps us deal with stress. So again, the three things are sleep, your food, and your exercise. That's the triangle that helps with lifestyle, that helps you with your stress. And then finally, the mind-body connection. The mind-body connection is a tool that I like, and I mentioned on a previous podcast. And that tool is the Stop, Breathe, Be tool. So if you're feeling anxious, you just tell yourself, stop, you breathe in deeply, and you breathe all that stress out. You release that stress. You let it go as you breathe out slowly. And then you say be. Be implies just be present, just be here. Right here, you're fine. There's nothing happening. You're safe. So you just say stop, breathe, be. It takes about 8 to 10 seconds. And it is a beautiful reset at any time in your day when you're feeling stressful thoughts. So that is a very high level look at what I call calm, CALM. If you want to calm down and power up, make sure you have clarity about what exactly is stressing you. Spend time to get understanding of what is causing you stress. Agency, change your mindset. Don't see yourself as a victim of those circumstances that are causing you stress and anxiety, but see yourself as the conqueror of and the hero of your life story, and you will conquer that stress. The L stands for life cycle, which is the triangle: sleep, food, and exercise. And the M stands for the mind-body connection. That's meditation, breathing, the Stop, Breathe, Be tool, and many others that I hope to share with you and encourage you to use in your own life. So I am Rabbi Avrohom Jax. I would like to ask you to please like, subscribe, comment. This helps the algorithm find our teachings and spread them further. And I bless you, as I do always, that you should find your flourish.